Tonight we listen to the last of the three great stories of Lent that were meant to form the mind and the hearts of those to be baptized, and tonight our own. And here tonight we listen to a story of Jesus, the barrier breaker. But this time the barrier he breaks is the greatest barrier of all. It is the barrier of death. And so the story of Lazarus, who tonight for us is every man and every woman. The Lord be with you.
With your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Please be seated.
Now a man was ill, Lazarus from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who had anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and dried his feet with her hair. It was her brother, Lazarus, who was ill. So the sisters sent word to him, saying,
Master, the one you love is ill.
When Jesus heard this, he said,
This illness is not an end in death, but it is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it.
Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he remained there for 2 days in the place where he was. Then, after this, he said to his disciples,
Let us go back to Judea.
The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just trying to stone you, and you want to go back there? Jesus answered,
Are there not 12 hours in a day? If one walks during the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks at night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him.
He said this, and then told them,
Our friend Lazarus is asleep, but I'm going to awaken him.
So the disciples said to him, Master, if he is asleep, he will be saved. But Jesus was talking about his death, while they thought that he meant ordinary sleep. So then Jesus said to them clearly,
Lazarus has died, and I am glad for you that I was not there, that you may believe. Let us go to him.
So Thomas, called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, Let us also go to die with him. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary sat at home. And Martha said to Jesus,
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you.
Jesus said to her,
Your brother will rise.
and Martha said to him,
I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day.
Jesus told her,
I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?
She said to him,
Yes, Lord, I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world.
When she said this, she went and called her sister Mary secretly, saying,
The teacher is here, and he is asking for you.
As soon as she heard this, she rose quickly and went to him. For Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still where Martha had met him. So when the Jews who were with her in the house comforting her saw Mary get up quickly and go out, they followed her, presuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her weeping, he became perturbed and deeply troubled and said,
Where have you laid him?
And they said to him,
Sir, come and see.
and Jesus wept. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so that this man would not have died? Jesus, perturbed again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay across it. And Jesus said,
Take away the stone.
Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him,
Lord, by now there will be a stench. He's been dead for 4 days.
and Jesus said to her,
Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?
So they took away the stone. And Jesus raised his eyes and said,
Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd here I have said this, that they may believe that you sent me.
And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice,
Lazarus, come out!
The dead man came out, tied hand and foot with burial bands, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to them,
Untie him and let him go.
Now many of the Jews who had come to Mary and seen what he had done began to believe in him.
The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
There are a lot of prequels and sequels being made into movies these days. Imagine with me if there was a sequel to the story you just heard of the raising of Lazarus from the dead. William B. Yeats, the poet, did just that in a play called Calvary. He imagined that sequel.
In this play, Lazarus appears amidst the crowd, watching Jesus carry his cross up that tragic hill. The people press forward to shout their mockery. Work a miracle, one cries. Save yourself, another cries. Call on your father now, before your bones have been picked bare by the great desert birds. Jesus notices Lazarus in the crowd and says,
Seeing that you died, lay in the tomb 4 days and were raised up, you will not mock me.
But Lazarus does indeed harbor resentment toward Jesus.
For 4 whole days I had been dead, and I was laying still in an old, comfortable mountain cavern. When you came climbing there with a great crowd and dragged me to the light.
And Christ responds,
I called your name. I gave you life.
but Lazarus feels no gratitude.
Come out, you called. You dragged me to the light, as boys drag out a rabbit when they have dug its hole away. And now, with all the shouting at your heels, you travel towards the death I am denied.
Lazarus did not want to be raised from the dead. Life was too much for him. He longed for a place to hide. But Jesus, with his insistence that we live, his insistence that we cross every threshold we encounter, his insistence that we grieve and grow and grieve and grow and grieve and grow, Jesus flooded with light that deathly solitude, that corner where Lazarus thought he might lie safe forever. Lazarus is every one of us. The question becomes then, are we ready to come to life? Suppose Lazarus would have preferred to stay dead, comfortable in his little bed of rock and closed off from the world. And then he hears that call back to life, back to feeling, back to suffering all over again, like in every love. He hears his name, Lazarus, come forth. And he responds, no, thank you. Why would I want to come out? Why would I want to have to die all over again? I've met people over the years who were married who would rather stay dead than ever come to life again. Rather than do the work, it was just easier to not feel anything anymore. I have met lifelong Catholics who just went through the motions, their hearts so far from the depth and the challenges and the transformations that this Jesus book calls us to. I have met students who have numbed themselves to anything in them that still wanted to connect deeply to anyone because they had tried once too often and it never seemed to work, and a broken heart now that was too much to carry. And so they buried themselves in a little nap somewhere on campus in the bowels of some library, and talked to as few people as they had to, instead of looking into the eyes of another human being and even managing to say hello. They would just look all day on the black and white pages of their textbook and the blue glow of their screens. I've tried over the years to say to them, come out, come out. I've tried to say to others around them, would someone please untie him? Would someone please set her free? Sometimes it worked. Too often it did not. It is this reluctance to be, to exist, that would drag our universe back into the darkness out of which God called it in the act of creation. It is this reluctance to be, to exist, to grow, to go through the never-ending agony of blossoming that generates so much negativity we read about every day, that leads many to conclude that our untidy world may be in dire straits. Just this morning I was reading about the latest doomsdayers. This year, 2017, is going to be the end of the world, they declare, along with group after group after group throughout the centuries. This year will be the one because of the total solar eclipse that is coming. I've met so many of them And I can say from the few I have met, and this is true of each of them without exception, they would rather be dead. They would rather be dead than alive in this world with all of its troubles. They would rather be dead. Jesus would reverse such depression and meanness that it often generates. Jesus summons us to life, hope, humor, compassion, solidarity, love, things that make a cynic's skin crawl. Like the Lazarus of Yeats's play, we may, in our moodier moments, resist his summons. We may lay there hitting the snooze alarm, hoping the stone behind which we would hide forever will stay put, block all resonance of his call to come out and grow. Yet this is indeed what Jesus came to do. He came to contradict our inclination to withdraw from people, from pain and effort, from our experience of limitation, from our potential to make mistakes and fail, to avoid any revelations that just might shatter our complacency. And so he shouts out again and again, Lazarus, Bill, Margaret, Mary, come forth. Jacob, Jeffrey, and Benjamin, Caitlin and Candace and Aaron, come forth. Nate, Catherine, come forth. Do not resist your gestation, your development, your emerging self. Do not abort your own becoming. Keep growing, keep emerging, no matter the setbacks. And sometimes it will be to no avail that your name will sound. My friends, our self-appointed tombs cannot be our final resting place. His wake-up call will sound, and it will ultimately be too commanding, too challenging to resist, and we will stagger, you and I, we will stagger, reluctantly perhaps, out of our fear in the face of life to hear his next, even more frightening yet enticing command. Untie him. Unbind her. Let them go free. Free to become the saints, the poets, the artists, the scientists, the forever beautifuls God created them to be. Only faith can do this. Only faith can break open locked chambers of possibility, restore numbed zones to feeling, and recharge desire.